Hello everyone and welcome to Azure's Live Mert to the Future. Today I have a very special guest, Jonah Andersson will be with us today. Hi Jonah, welcome.
Hi, Mert. Really great to be here tonight. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, welcome. How are you?
I'm great. I had a long day at work, but I'm energized.
Okay, great. So
Thank
before
you.
we start talking about Azure Durable Functions, can you please introduce yourself, your community activities, what are you doing at your work maybe?
Yeah, sure. So let me just show my there. So my name is Jonah Andersson. I work as a software developer consultant at Forefront Consulting. It is an IT consulting company in Sweden. And I, on my free time, I like doing voluntary stuff like mentoring in different nonprofit organization. And then I also started a user group here in Sweden. It's in Sundsvall city, which is in the mid north of Sweden. And it was missing in my city, and I started it. And I really look forward to create a community and invite great speakers like Mert and everyone that's watching that may be interested. Feel free to follow and contact me if you want to share knowledge. And as my background, I am a full stack developer that codes mostly C Sharp and in .NET, and I love developing to the cloud with Microsoft Azure. So that's a bit about me, and the picture tells itself. Yes, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. So you're an MVP.
Yes,
Congrats, by the
yes,
way.
thank you.
So, do you want to talk about it? How do you feel?
Yes, yeah, I still can't believe that I'm an MVP. I got it in the 1st of June. And I didn't actually know that MVP award existed until like someone told me about it. And I've been doing this like talks and sharing knowledge. So I'm very happy that Microsoft appreciated all the things that I do. And now that I have this role, I'm very excited to like make more difference, and I'm more inspired to share more knowledge through my user group. And I'm glad to be here. Thank you. And also, I just recently got certified as an Azure Developer Associate, so certifications was a great thing to have as well.
Also, you are the Cloud Community Champion by
Yes, I
Cloud
am.
Family.
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
Yeah, I missed that badge there. Sorry.
Yes, I am looking for that patch, but I couldn't see. So I want to say that
Oh, that's
because
good.
that is an also important patch.
Yeah, it is. But I have it on my website, jonah.anderson.tech. I have the badge there. I'm sorry, I missed that.
Okay, sorry, Gregor. Next time maybe.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, so what are we going to talk about today?
Yeah, I will be talking about durable functions. And I would like to start about the queue problem because in queue problem uh, we usually experience queue problem in programming. So sometimes there are things in programming that we require to run parallel tests, like parallel tasks at the same time without losing its state. It's like when I was on the airport and I couldn't leave my line on the queue because I was worried I would lose my state in the line. So it's like also with programming that sometimes we need to do stateful functions. So that's the purpose that Azure Durable Functions would solve complex workflow problems in a serverless architecture. So I will be introducing about cloud computing, what serverless is, Azure Functions, Azure Durable Functions, the different patterns, and I will be also showing a demo about a durable functions in which I use function chaining to integrate it with different Azure services like Azure Blob, Twilio, SingGrid, and even Azure Service Bus. So this session is going to be like about a bit of introduction to intermediate level, maybe, to those who are new to durable functions, and some learning resources that I wanted to share as well. So cloud computing, as we all know already, especially those that have been working with it for a while, we have different kinds of deployment models for that. We have the infrastructure, platform as a service, and then function as a service, and software as a service. And I will be focusing on durable functions or Azure Functions, which is a serverless. And what is serverless anyway? So serverless is an execution model that is provided by cloud providers like Microsoft Azure, Google, and AWS. But what it really means is that it fully abstracts the servers, which means that we developers don't need to worry about the underlying infrastructures behind it, but we focus more on the functionality and the things that we need to do as a developer. And the good thing about serverless is that it's scalable. You can create it instantly, and it's event-driven, which is perfect to those that wants to create event-driven architecture applications like in serverless. And I know that the word serverless is a cliche, but it is not really serverless. There are servers behind it. It's just that Azure is taking good care of that for us. So that's serverless, and I usually compare serverless in a sweet way. For example, we have the architecture, the standard or the old one, which is the monolith. They're like cakes, like they have different layers. You have the database servers, we have the web servers, and the application. Like they're in one infrastructure. That's a typical monolith. And you see here also on the left side that in monolith architecture, you have more control. And then there's also the microservices, like a mini services that are separated or isolated from each other, but they serve its own purpose. And this one also, and I compare serverless as like small candies because they have different flavors. They're small, they're tiny, they're easy, and they're light, which means that it's also easier for us and gives us more more productivity and effectivity as developers. So that's I hope that this sweet comparison doesn't make you hungry, but I like comparing it this way. And I wanted to
And sorry,
sure.
and normally I say microservices and serverless is better, but after I saw this slide, I changed my mind. I think the monolith is best.
Yeah, it really depends on what problems you are solving. Actually, the monolith, we're trying to get away from that, especially if we're in the process of moving into cloud. But I think microservices, serverless, and even using containers has its like special purpose. That's why they exist, and it really depends on what kind of business requirements that we're trying to solve. So that's why it's good to know this technology. Say, oh, there's serverless, oh, there's microservices, so we know which one to use. So that's good. Do you have anything else to ask or about this? Or discuss, maybe share your experience.
Maybe I can ask about monolith containers because sometimes people want to migrate their applications to containers, make them containerization. But the biggest mistake is they're going to make everything into a container and running that container on maybe app service or a Kubernetes environment. And they think that they containerize their application, but I think it is not the correct way. You can do it, by the way. Also,
Yes.
it works, but
Yeah.
making microservices or containerization, you need to split your application with different services.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with you. For example, there are advantage of microservices as well because if something, for example, we're talking about cupcakes here as an example as a
Yeah.
microservice. So one of the cupcakes may be like an email API, and the other maybe it's like another function that stores data to a storage. Then if something goes wrong with the email service, then you can fix it in an isolated way and without affecting the others. So that's one of the good things about microservices as well. What do you
Okay.
think
Deep
about that?
dives. Yes.
All right, yeah. So shall I continue or do you have more
Sure.
questions?
No.
Yeah, sure. All right, so that's like the sweet comparison. So it means that the more we go to like microservices, serverless, the more we are productive. I'm talking about we developers. Like we developers wants to code. We don't want to like maintain systems and fix bugs in the monolith old structure. So we want to be effective. So that's a good example. And why do we need to build serverless in Azure? First is that, as mentioned, it enhances our productivity as developers. It can auto scale, which means that you don't need to manually upgrade uh, the performance and things that you need to do when you are in a monolith. You have to manually upgrade it. But if you're in the cloud, you have the option to auto scale. And then you can also have the option to pay only for what you use. There's a model, a price model called consumption model. That's a good example of this. And you can develop intelligent apps by integrating your Azure functions or serverless durable functions with cognitive and AI ML ops within Azure and even other services. And ability to solve complex problems, just like the keeping the state of your functions, and a seamless connectivity integration to logic apps, IoT services also. So that's good. And before we dig deeper into durable functions, I wanted to introduce you about Azure Functions because it's actually the root or the main service of Azure that is serverless, and you can code it in F sharp, C sharp, JavaScript, and other languages, and it is event driven, and you can integrate it with other services. And Azure Function is actually composed of you have the code, and then you have the events triggered by different triggers like HTTP trigger, blob trigger, or service bus trigger, and you have the data. So that's what Azure Functions is, and what's behind it. That's the infrastructure that we don't need to maintain or think about. Of course, the settings maybe and configuration. And for the pricing model, we have the consumption plan, which is like you pay for what you use. But there's also actually an app service plan. This is a good example if your organization wants to like have like a monthly budget for your Azure Functions services, then this is a good one. And there's also an option for premium plan if you want the premium features for maximum performance, depending on your needs. And here comes the main topic. It's the durable functions. Durable functions is the extensions of on top of Azure Functions, which means that durable functions does everything already. It's just like Azure Functions is the extension of it. The difference is that it allows you to run long running and eternal workflow that are stateful, and you can create complex or implement complex stateful functions. And right now I believe it's these are the languages that are supported: C sharp, JavaScript, Python, F sharp, and PowerShell. So I wanted to show you this example here. This one here is the big difference of Azure Functions and durable functions. So even though durable functions is the extension of Azure Functions. These are the two difference. Azure Functions are stateless. This means that when the VMs where the Azure Functions are saved in Azure, when they are restarted, they loses its state. And when you have durable functions, they keep its state in your workflow. Do you have questions about that, Mert or Amy? Do you have experience about stateless and stateful?
No, maybe the audience have questions.
Yeah. Let's see. I don't. Let me check.
Do you have any questions? Please submit your questions in the chat so we can answer it.
I don't see that.
No, not yet, I think.
No, not yet, not yet.
Yeah.
Though I will continue. So those are the two differences of Azure Functions and durable functions. So these are the big difference. If you want to keep the state, then use durable functions, and otherwise you can just use normal ones. So the technology behind durable task framework, durable functions is a durable task framework, which is an open source library and lightweight framework. So there's an info about that on GitHub if you want to read more about it. And durable functions are composed of three types of functions. We have the client functions, the orchestrator, and then the activity functions. So client functions are like the starter function. They are like normal functions that can be triggered with HTTP trigger, blob trigger, and any trigger that any events that you can think of or that's supported in a normal one. And then there's also the orchestrator. So the orchestrator functions describe how your actions or your tasks are to be executed. And orchestrator can only be triggered using the orchestration trigger that comes from the client, the starter. So the starter kickstarts the orchestration designs the workflow, and it calls the activity that needs to be done. And the activity, they're like normal standard functions, and they can only, what's special about them if they are in a durable task framework is that they can only be triggered by the orchestrator. So those are the top three types that's available. And there's also a special one called entity functions, which is used in durable entities. And this one is special because you need to use an entity trigger to trigger it. And it's only supported in a higher version, which is a 2.0, and it only supports as of now in .NET and JavaScript. So the orchestrator, when we code or develop it, it's important that we design our workflow in a deterministic way, because the orchestrator is deterministic, which means that you need to be specific on how you want your workflow be, because the whole orchestrator functions will be replayed. So for example, if you have a forever loop, and then you have it in the orchestrator, so it kind of like mess up the entire orchestration because it's not designed properly. And if you want to read more about orchestrator, you can check out the deterministic APIs to learn more about some information about that. And here is an example of deterministic and non-deterministic. So as you can see here on the left side, this is like the durable functions with the orchestrator, and on the right side you see like different like serverless normal Azure functions. So they're not they don't have the workflow, so they're kind of like separated, and they can be one function may be saved in one VMs in Azure, one can be in a different else, so it can lose its state. But with with an orchestrator, you have control of how your tasks are executed. So that's a good example. And when it comes to constraints, when deciding the do's and don'ts, there are some rules to that. This is something that you can read on the Microsoft Docs documentation, or the durable functions constraints. So it's recommended not to generate random numbers in the orchestrator function, like GUIDs. What you can do instead is you can retrieve data in activity functions. And then it's also not advisable to access data stores like connection strings or configuration in the orchestrator, and you can pass it into the activity function instead. And not advisable to use threads. You can use the durable orchestration context instead, and no infinite loops, because it breaks the rule of being deterministic as an orchestrator. And at the same time, if you create infinite loops, maybe it works and no errors, but it might cost you a lot of charges in your bill and your Azure subscription, especially if you are in a consumption plan. So it is good to be careful in designing the flows, especially with loops. And then, but however, since durable functions allow us to create like eternal, like non-ending orchestration, if you really need to do that, that's long running, then you can use a method via the context. There's something called create as new. Then you can make use of that to create one. And then don't use current date time, because date and time, it changes all the time. So like every seconds changes. So the time that we have. So but if you really need to do the time, you can use the UTC date time from the context. So there are different patterns. We have the function chaining, the fanning out and the fanning in, and then async HTTP and HTTP APIs. There's also monitoring, human interaction pattern, and also external events correlation pattern. And the function chaining looks like this, which will also be my example at the end of the talk. It's a first pattern that runs the several functions in sequence. So if you can see F1, F2, F3, and F2, F4, they're like a sequence of functions. So here the second function waits for the input, like var x waits for the input for variable y, and then so on. The z also waits for the input from the second function. So it's a pattern that waits for the input of the previous function. So that's function chaining. And this is...
We have sorry, John, we have a comment. Can you see it? Or do you want me to read it?
Yeah, let's see. You can read it.
Okay. That Pyfly said, so you don't generate GUIDs in the orchestrator, but generate them in an activity function. And in a function chaining pattern, have the GUID generation as one of the functions.
Let me just see the comment. I don't see that. Can you use that? You cannot post it. Let me just go to it.
Sure.
Let's see. There. Don't share it, please. There, I see that. So don't. In the function chaining pattern, have the GUID generation as one of the functions. I don't really understand the question so much. Can you rephrase? Do you know what did? Have? Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. Okay. You generate the GUIDs not in the orchestrator, but you generate it in your activity functions. Let's see. In the activity functions. I hope that answers the question. Let's see, I can go back. Here. So you don't generate the GUIDs in the orchestrator, but you can retrieve data and work on your data in the activity functions. Thank you. All right. Sounds good.
I think we're okay.
Yeah. Good. Thank you, dead pie fly. I don't know who's
Thank you
that
for your
mysterious.
questions.
Thank you. All right. So now I'm gonna move forward so we can go to my demo soon. I'm excited to show you my demo. All right. So this is like the function chaining in action. So when you kickstart the orchestration. So the orchestrator is started because it's like the designer where the workflow starts. So when it is started, maybe it can be the orchestrator was triggered by a blob trigger. Then when it started, the activity 1 or function 1 is scheduled. And when it's scheduled, the orchestrator sleeps. And then when activity 1 is done, the orchestrator wakes up. And then it schedules the next activity, and then it sleeps again, and then activity 2 is done, and then the orchestration is completed. So that's like how the function chaining works. And in between the activity, for example, when the activity 1 is working, there can be data passed in from the orchestrator into the next function, just like a sequence. So you can actually do what you want and pass data from in this type of pattern as well. And the next pattern is fan out, fan in. It's when you execute multiple functions or multiple tasks at the same time in parallel, and then you aggregate the result when it's done, when all of them is done. So in this example, in the code snippet here, so we have the orchestrator, and it's kind of like set a backup the site content. So here you have a list of tasks, and there's a for loop in it, and in every task it's kind of like call another activity to copy that specific file to a blob. And it uses, when it comes to fan in, fan out, it's important to use the task when all. That's when you aggregate all the results, and then you do something else or return that result from your orchestrator. So that's the fan in and fan out. And this is a good pattern to use if you have something, if you want to run multiple tasks in parallel, and you only you want to have one result in all of that. So just like this example. And another example is pattern is the Async HTTP APIs, which means that you can use it to expose asynchronous long-running processes over HTTP. So in this example, you see that I have like an example that I wanted to check if my website is available. So I have the durable context, and I have a URL, and I use the durable HTTP response and use the method get, pass in my URL. And here I just have like a simple if-else condition that if my website have like a good status code or not, then I throw in an error. Otherwise, I can log that information, like the content of my website. I don't log it, or I can process it farther in the backend. So that's the Async HTTP API pattern. And the next pattern is the monitor pattern. It's actually the opposite of Async HTTP. In this pattern, you actually wait. It's like a monitor pattern. You set a time or a timer. For example, in this case, you set the time and expiry time to wait for a specific job to be completed. And when it's completed, then you, for example, you call an activity or a function called send alert, and then you perform your tasks until that timer is done. So that's the monitor pattern. And the next pattern is the human interaction, which means that in human interaction is special because it waits for external events, and such external events, one example is like an approval of someone before it can be processed further. And it doesn't mean that it should be like a person, but it can be like an automated logic or a timer. So you can also use that. So in this example, we have an approval workflow example where there's like a due time and a timeout. And here we see that we have an approval event, and if the approval is not handled by that specific person, then there will be a timeout, and that will be escalated by calling another function called escalate. And you can do something else, like if someone doesn't reply or approve, then maybe escalate it to another person in another department, or handle it further, or send an email. So that's an example of human interaction. So next is aggregator.
Sorry,
Sure.
another question from Dead by Fly. Are there any limitations on pattern support with Python durable function, or are they all supported?
I said, are there any with Python durable functions? I believe that they should be as long as the language is supported in durable functions, it should be possible. No, there shouldn't be any limitations. But I know that PowerShell, they kind of like have limitations. For example, when it comes to sub orchestration, because in durable functions you have an orchestrator. But in the orchestrator, you can also create a sub orchestration. So these patterns that I'm setting right now, like about 6 of them, they are just like the known patterns. But you as a developer actually can customize your orchestration by having an orchestrator, and in your orchestrator you have sub orchestrations. But I believe it should be supported. I code a lot of C#, not Python, but it should be supported, Python language. So definitely check out the MS Docs for more support or information about that. I hope it answers Dead Pie Fly. All right. Can we continue?
Sure.
Yeah. So next is the aggregator pattern. It's like it's another pattern that's used for stateful entities. It's to aggregate event data in over a period of time. It's usually used for durable entities. So I myself haven't used it a lot, this pattern. One of the patterns that I want to do hands-on, but this is how it looks if you work with entity contexts with durable entities. So this is a good pattern to use instead. And when you're developing durable functions, you can actually see the orchestration details through Postman. So you can, for example, if you have an HTTP request, you have in Postman, you can see the details, like the ID, instant ID of your orchestration, the URL, to raise event, terminate it, to purge it, and even to restart your instance or orchestration. And when it comes to Kubernetes, like Azure Functions have a support in Kubernetes. There's a service called Aggregator. Have you worked on that, Mert? Aggregator?
Not yet,
No, no. Yeah, I
but
had a
on my
question.
to-do list.
Yes, I heard that you can also use Azure Functions using this service. It's called Kata. I believe it's an extension or a service in Kubernetes, and you can use it to like do event-driven coding and development with Azure Functions. So it's a tooling. So definitely we're checking out to those who wants to combine Kubernetes with Azure Functions. So that's a good thing. And I myself haven't tried it, so I'm into serverless right now, but I really want to try coding with Kubernetes and containers. I think it's interesting. So I when I have more hands-on, I'll definitely share more about this. And um, let's see. So uh, right now, durable functions. This is like the durable functions support map that we have. So it's fully supported in .NET Core 3.1, but I think with the latest update, it's it's already like supported in .NET 6 preview, and it will be fully supported as the time or as .NET improves or upgrades. So, but right now, what's supported in .NET 5 and .NET 6 are the normal functions. So that's we can follow Azure Functions on Twitter. They usually update about the product updates for this. And for the best practices, you can use application insights for durable functions. That's for logging the instances. And you can actually use the application insights, and then on the Azure portal, when you have deployed your durable functions, you can use the app service editor and the tools that are available to let you see the logs of your functions through the browser. And I believe one of the previous speakers in the Azure Live, I forgot his name, I think he talked about this with you, Mert, on that session. Do you remember that?
Do you mean Rick?
Yeah, I
PlayStation
think he talked
Vandenbosch.
about, yeah, he talked about, I think he showed when he showed or demo about Azure Functions, he showed how logging works through the portal. So you can also use that, and also you can also integrate durable functions with App Insights. And when it comes to versioning, it's good to version it consciously, because when the durable functions are already in production, which means that they're like long running and they're like have that state. So it's not good to break that, especially if it's in the production. But what it is advisable instead is to do side-by-side deployment and use the, for example, deployment slots in different when it comes to upgrading or developing with new versions. And another tool that's good to have is the Azure Storage Explorer to see the statuses and the logs. And there's an article written in Medium about durable functions, blue-green strategies, where the author actually did the tests in different types of deployment strategies for Azure durable functions. So this one is definitely worth checking out, this link. So it's an interesting long article, but good to read. And error handling. So when you want to error handle durable functions, you will actually get the function failed exception. So in order to prevent that, it's good to like call another function's activity, or you can also use the built-in feature, which is an automatic retry and failure function, which is exactly called call activity with retry async. And you can use the normal try catch block. And this is how it looks for auto retry. So you have the context, and instead of using the normal call activity, and then the name of the function, you can actually call directly this function, call activity retry. So it's gonna retry your functions if it fails. But what you need, if you use that function, you would need to pass in your retry options. And in your retry options, you can choose the interval of your retry, like you want it to retry after 5 seconds, and the number of attempts, like 5 seconds, and you're gonna try it like 3 times. So that's an example of one error handling that you can use. And then of course the try catch black example that you can have. And you can also unit test durable functions using mock unit and xunit. So this is an example of a unit test for an orchestration or orchestrator. So you can unit test the orchestrator, and you can also unit test each activity functions. And as we're developing Azure Durable Functions, you can do it on Azure Portal, Visual Studio, VS Code, and you would need to install the Azure Functions core tools. You can use Postman and the Azure Storage Explorer for local dev. So it's time for a demo. So this is my demo looks like. So I have a durable client function, and I will be passing in the image that I upload, and then my orchestrator is gonna do its job to orchestrate the activities that I want. So first function would be the activity functions that sends a message to Azure Service Bus, and then when it's done, it's gonna send an SMS and call via Twilio. And then the next step is that when it's done, it's gonna send an email to me and then get that message from the Azure Service Bus. So that's my function is about, and the expected result will be like this. So I will be getting an SMS and a phone call and also an email, and this is with the Service Bus, SendGrid, and Twilio. So let me just try to switch screens maybe. Let's see, stop sharing.
Before demo, may I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
Let's imagine I am new to Azure Functions, and I want to make some practice to learn, but I don't have any Azure subscription or Azure credits. Can I use a local development environment to learn Azure Functions?
I think you would need to have an Azure subscription. If you want to subscribe, I think you can learn Azure Functions without subscribing to Azure, but I think it's best to have an Azure service, because I think it's good to have that flow, the entire process of developing and then publishing and deploying it. But you can, as long as you have the Azure core tools and the VS Code and the Visual Studio, you can do that. But I think it will be kind of limited when it comes to the entire process.
So I can do it with proper extensions and workloads. Am I correct?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
you can do that. But if you need to publish, then you would need an Azure account and pay for it. Yes. So you can, that's one of the good things of Azure. I have sun on me now. It's sun, you see it's sunset in Sweden. I have a window in front of me. So yeah, so if you really want to to deploy it and use application insights, so definitely you would need that. But to get started, I think it's enough to code locally to learn, and you don't have. But if you Azure actually provides like free service, like trial account. So for new beginners that don't have or never tried Azure, they can make use of the free account that's available for a certain period of time. So
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Are you interested to learn more about Azure Functions?
Yes.
Yes, let's help each other. We can code the project. Maybe do an Azure Functions automation with for your show. We can
Why
do
not?
that. Why
Yes,
not?
definitely.
Yes. Yeah. Do you have more questions before I show my code?
Not now. Maybe
Not that.
at the end of the show.
Yeah, sure. Let's see. So I have Visual Studio here. All right. Let's see.
And I'm going to make full screen.
Yeah.
Is it okay for you?
Yeah, sure. All right. So here is my Visual Studio. It's actually like a simple app with like I have a function. I called it Durable Azure Storage Functions, and as I mentioned, it's gonna be a function chaining example. And here I have a function app called Serverless Azure Storage Notifier. So I'm working locally right now. So what I have here, for example, I'm gonna try to show the chain. So here is my orchestrator. I have the context, and in my context, let me start first how it's here. I have a lot. I should have separated everything, but it needs refactoring. Here it is. Here. So here's my client functions, which I called Azure Storage Notifier Start. And in here, I have a blob trigger. And here is the name of my container in Azure. I have the connection string, which I set in my local settings, .json here. And I created an object called, the type of object is called cloud block blob. And the name. So I kind of log it. So I check I check if my cloud blob is not null, then I'm gonna save it as an object and pass it into my orchestration. And this is like the important function. You use await starter start as new, and then the name of the orchestrator that the orchestrator function. So this is important one, and here you can pass in an object, or you can also set it as null. And along with this one, when you call this, you actually get an instance ID in return, which is actually important in logging, not just for logging, but if you want to call it from an external event or do something with it. So it's good to know that this is the specific instance of the orchestration that you want to recall. And my orchestrator looks like this. So this is like my workflow. So here I have my context, and in order to get the value that you passed in through the durable context, you would need to use context get input in the type of object that you passed in. So I created it as an object in a variable, and I have some variable here. So here's my first chain. So I have call activity, Azure, send a message to service bus queue. So when it is accepted, it's gonna send the message to Azure Service Bus, which I also have here in the settings. And then when it's done, it's gonna, here in line 48, it's gonna send SMS and call the users or me using Twilio. And then when it's done, it's gonna send an email using SendGrids. And then when the message is retrieved from the service bus queue, it's gonna email it to me and then just log it. And to check how the other function looks like, so it's kind of like I have a service bus connection here, and It uses a service bus client to compose a message with the URL of the cloud, the blob of the image, and then it's gonna save it to the service bus queue, and then the next one is send and call using Twilio API. Say I access actually the configuration settings here from line 137 to 141, and I have my Twilio secrets and ID, my verified number, and here is where I send an SMS to me, the verified number, to inform me that I uploaded or I have a message from the service bus. I log it, and then it's gonna send an SMS, and it's gonna also make a call to me. And then when it's done, and it's gonna send me an email, and it's just like I access the configuration from the activity functions. I have a list of email that I have, and kind of like compose the message that I want to send. So everything happens back end, and then I have like a check if the status code is successful. It does its thing. Otherwise, it's gonna like do log the error. So that's it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to run this. I hope it doesn't crash, because last time I did it, my computer like stopped work. I was hanging. Let's see. I have a tool called Microsoft Azure Storage Explorer. Let's see. So this is my Storage Explorer, and I have an image here. So I will upload one of my photos from my local file or local computer, and like push it to my blob. And when this one transferring is done or completed, you should try to run something here. It's it's not running. It's typical when I'm demoing. Let me just try again. My computer is hanging.
And now it's a tradition on live sessions.
Oi. my Visual Studio crashed. I'm sorry. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I talk Swedish. In Swedish, when it's something bad's happen or it's just a reaction, you say oi. All right. Let me just rebuild this one. Oh, this happened one time as well. Technical problems happens. Let's see. So I'm gonna try again. So this is my Dutch. So it's running. I'm gonna try to. So my functions is running locally. So I'm doing all of this locally, but I'm connected to my storage account in Azure. So I'm gonna upload one file again, and it's transferring to the cloud, it said. So hopefully this will kickstart the orchestration without problems in my local machine. So it's transferring, and it's not running. Oh my god. It's not running. It worked before I was on the show. Let's see. I'm sorry about that. There, look. Now it's doing its thing, and I'm getting a call and SMS. So I'm on a
You have a trial account.
trial
You can
account right
remove
now.
this message at any time by upgrading to a full account. Press any key to execute your code.
Hi, Jonah. Call reminder. New blob added to service bus queue.
So it's kind of like added me a reminder, and I also got like an SMS here, where I can click and look at the image that I uploaded. So it's also here, and I also got, I think, an email here. Here was the email that I received to my account, and if I click on that, it should show the image that I uploaded from my machine here. So this is like on my blob storage. So that is my short demo is about actually. Do you have any questions about that?
No, maybe we have questions from the audience.
Yeah, okay, great. Let's see, let me check.
Okay.
Let's see. Good. Come on, little function, you
Yes.
can do it. All right, where's the question? Python. I missed a lot.
I think they are in the comments. So,
Comments, yeah.
are there any questions?
I don't think so. It looks like it's like
Okay, I have a
comments
question,
about. Yeah, sure.
but not about the demo.
Yeah,
Um,
sure.
Again, I want to learn Azure Function. I'm a starter. And
Yes.
do you have any recommendations other than MS Docs?
Yeah, I actually have that in my presentation. Let me just share it again. Let's see. Good question. I have it here. I'm switching between 3 screens. So that was the demo. I got a message. I got a message on my clock as well, a call and an email, and both on the Twilio. And so when it comes to learning, aside from Microsoft Learns and the documentation, I have actually a channel by Mark Ducker and Gweth Peña Sequenza. There's a channel called Serverless in Azure that actually teaches about Azure Functions from the beginner's level to the advanced level. So Mark Ducker, he's in Netherlands. He's also an Azure MVP. He does a lot of talk about how to use durable functions in real scenarios. His project on Twitter, and it's his job. So definitely check it out. So that's one good example. And to learn Azure Functions actually is to keep learning. Do hands-on. I always believe in learn by doing. So it's not just reading the theory. It's kind of boring. So it's good to learn the basics of the theory, and at the same time you do lots of hands-on. So you learn by doing. Actually, do you believe in that, Mert? Learn by
Yes,
doing.
sir. I don't like reading documentation.
Me too. I even though I like reading books, I do like it, especially if I'm still starting in a certain technology. But I like using Microsoft Docs because it has a lot of information. But otherwise, I like searching for specific questions that I want answer or need to solve at a certain moment. So that's good. And I also wanted to share that next week there will be like an event for Serverless Day Camp done by Bit Project in bitproject.org, and I'm gonna be one of the mentors in the next 8 to 9 weeks, starting next week, where I will be mentoring students from outside Sweden or internationally that will be learning Azure Functions. So it'll be fun as well. Teaching kids
Okay.
durable functions. Yeah, I think
That
it will
would be
be
nice.
fun.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's about it. And I also wrote an article about in Dev about durable functions as like an introduction, an overview, and what we talked about. So I have a repo where my example is published, and it's currently in progress because I'm developing, learning a lot about how I can integrate durable functions. So my next plan for this project is try to use how to retrieve and store and retrieve data in Azure Cosmos DB. That's my next project. And that's it. Thank you so much. And I have a user group, so if you want to speak and share knowledge, feel free to join us in the meetup group. And follow me on Twitter, CJ Kodare. And Kodare actually is the Swedish word for coder. So if you're curious, CJ.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you
Are
so
you
much,
open?
Mert.
You are welcome.
I'm sorry.
Are you open for the PRs on your GitHub project?
I'm sorry?
Are you open for PRs for your GitHub project? So we can
Yeah.
contribute your video?
Yeah, sure. It's right now my project is like simple ones, but definitely contribute if you want. This is like a project that I'm creating to like learn with integration, but definitely feel free to join in. I
Okay,
would like
thank
to
you.
learn from you as well, from everyone.
Thank you. So, thank you very much
Yeah.
for joining me today. I
Yeah.
learned lots of things,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
hopefully see you in further episodes for
Yeah.
different topics.
Yeah, sure. I can talk about different things. Maybe when I hack the durable functions with Azure Key Vault, which is I'm planning as well, then definitely I will come back and share.
Okay, maybe we can do something about KEDA together.
Yeah, that sounds good because that is something I want to learn, and I'm in the starting level for containers, so it will be good. Good project.
Okay,
We keep in touch.
sure. So thank you very much again, and thanks
Thank you so
everyone.
much. Thank you
So,
everyone for watching.
see you. Cheers.
Yeah, thank you. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.